There's an old broken toy organ sitting on a porch held together by duct tape and stubbornness, and somehow it still works. Kind of. Depends on the day. If you're wondering how that organ ended up becoming the heart of a family, well, this is one of those stories. A story about a single dad who stopped on the side of an empty highway because sometimes pulling over changes everything. A story about a soldier mom in a wheelchair, two little girls, and a secret worth $374 million. But money. Yeah, that's not what this is really about. It's about home, and the things we fight for when there's nothing left to fight with but love. If you believe in stories like that, quiet ones about second chances, unexpected family, and broken things that still have music left in them, maybe consider giving this video a like. And if you want more, subscribe. No pressure, just an open door. Like this one. The wind always sounded different out here. It wasn't just wind, it was sand scraping against metal. It was the dry hum of a world trying to hold itself together. Caleb Foster adjusted his cap, one hand on the steering wheel of his old Chevy pickup, the other tapping the dashboard like it might change the fact the check engine light had been blinking since Christmas. Just as he rounded the curve near mile marker 49, where the desert met the forgotten edge of the county landfill, he hit the brakes, because what he saw didn't belong here. A wheelchair, not empty. A woman sat in it, facing the horizon like she was daring the sun to set on her one more time. Her hair was tied back with a piece of fraying green fabric. Dust settled on her sleeves, on the metal frame of the chair. Even her boots were worn half through. Next to her stood two little girls, maybe 7 or 8, twins. One held a battered stuffed fox, the other a plastic bucket with a broken handle. Behind them, stacked like some half-forgotten shrine, was a toy keyboard, keys, yellowed casing, cracked but carefully wrapped in a blue tarp, like someone still believed it mattered. No one waved him down. No one asked for help. Caleb eased the truck to a stop engine, coughing twice before going silent. For a moment he didn't move, just watched. The girls were whispering, hands clenched together. The woman didn't look scared. She didn't even look hopeful. She looked done, but not broken. There's a difference. Caleb opened the door, boots crunching into gravel. "Need a hand?" he called out. No answer. The woman turned her head slowly, gave him a look that was neither grateful nor defensive, just measured. "We're fine," she said, voice rough but steady. "Just resting." In the middle of a landfill, Caleb arched a brow. The woman didn't blink. "Better than where we were." He glanced around. No car. No bike. Not even tracks leading here. Only the wind and the heat, and this impossible picture of 3 people in a broken toy keyboard, stranded like a shipwreck on dry land. "Look," Caleb sighed, wiping his hands on his jeans. "Not trying to pry, but this ain't a place you just stop and rest. Something tells me things aren't all right." The woman folded her arms. "We don't need charity." Caleb nodded. "Good. 'Cause I'm fresh out of it, but I got a truck. It runs most days, and a house about 7 miles that way. It ain't pretty, but it's got a roof, some soup on the stove, and probably more chairs than you're dealing with right now." For the first time, one of the girls looked up. Her eyes, tired, wary, flicked between Caleb and her mother. Silence stretched. Then the woman exhaled, slow. All right, she said, but just for tonight. Caleb nodded. Fair enough. And without another word, he walked around, popped the passenger door open, and waited. The truck rattled down the cracked highway, tires hummed against faded asphalt. Caleb kept both hands on the wheel, stealing glances at the woman seated beside him. She sat upright, stiff as a fence post, arms crossed over her chest like they might hold her together. The two girls were huddled in the back seat. One curled beneath a threadbare blanket Caleb kept there for emergencies. The other hugged the battered, stuffed fox to her chest like it was breathing. For a while, no one said anything. Only the hum of the road, the occasional squeak from the toy keyboard sliding around in the truck bed. Finally, Caleb broke first. Name's Caleb, he said, voice low but steady. Caleb Foster. You. The woman didn't answer right away. Her eyes stayed on the horizon, then after a long breath, Harper, she said. Harper Jensen. Caleb nodded. All right, good to meet you, Harper, and the girls. She glanced over her shoulder, softening just a notch. Luna and Hazel. They yours? Caleb asked gently. Harper turned her head. Her expression said everything. A look that landed somewhere between obviously and what kind of question is that? Right. Dumb question, Caleb muttered, adjusting his grip on the wheel. Silence again. Then Harper asked, You do this often? Do what? Pick up strangers off the side of the road. Caleb chuckled under his breath. Not really. Guess I've got a bad habit of stopping for things that don't look like they belong where they are. Harper didn't smile. We're not looking to stay long. Didn't figure you were. He let that hang there for a while, then added, Ain't asking questions, ain't my business. You need a roof for the night, you got it. After that, we'll figure it out if you want. For the first time, Harper's posture loosened barely. Her hands unclenched. The strain around her mouth softened just enough to look human again. In the back, Luna whispered something to Hazel. Hazel nodded, then peeked between the seats, studying Caleb like kids do with stray dogs, curious but ready to bolt. Is it a big house? Hazel finally asked, her voice barely a whisper. Caleb smiled. Nope. Not big. But it's got 4 walls, a kitchen, and the front door still locks most days. That was the first time one of the girls smiled. Small, quick, but real. And in the rearview mirror, Caleb saw Harper glance back at her daughters, then quietly, without looking at him, whisper, Thank you. Caleb didn't answer, just tapped the steering wheel and kept driving. The miles rolled by slow, like the truck itself was unsure if it wanted to finish the job. Outside, the desert flattened into long stretches of sagebrush and rusted fence posts leaning like tired men. Inside, it was quieter than any truck cabin had a right to be. Not tense exactly, just unfamiliar. Every now and then, the toy keyboard in the truck bed let out a faint broken note when jostling it enough to push one stubborn key. A dull, hollow ding. Out of tune, out of place. Caleb glanced in the rear view. Luna had her head on Hazel's shoulder, both of them half asleep, fingers still laced together. He shifted his gaze forward, then toward Harper. She hadn't moved since they left. Her arms stayed folded, her shoulders square, like she was bracing for something. Caleb cleared his throat. That keyboard, the kids play it. For a beat, he thought she wouldn't answer. Then quietly, It doesn't really work anymore. A couple of keys do, mostly just noise now. Still, Caleb said funny thing to carry around. Harper's fingers tightened against her arm. It's not about the music, not really. She didn't explain further, and Caleb didn't push. But he noticed the way her eyes flicked back to the truck bed every time the wind rattled a note loose. Silence folded back over them. Then Harper broke it, voice softer this time. It was the first thing Luna and Hazel ever owned that was theirs. Somebody gave it to them at a church giveaway back when they were 3. Broken even then. Caleb nodded. Kids didn't mind, huh? No, she said. They didn't. The wind shifted. The keyboard dinged again, higher this time, like a tiny bell that refused to be ignored. Caleb tapped the steering wheel, eyes steady on the dirt road that branched off the highway. Well, home's just up this way. It ain't much. Got an old swing that don't swing, a fence that don't fence, and a front door that jams when it rains. Harper didn't smile, but her shoulders sank just a little. Some part of her armor loosened. In the back seat, Hazel stirred awake. Eyes half open, she whispered, Do, front doors have to be perfect to be home. Caleb blinked, then shook his head slow. Nah, kid, a door just has to open. The truck turned off the road, kicking up a cloud of dust that glowed gold in the late afternoon sun. And the broken keyboard sang one last note as if agreeing. The truck creaked as it rolled up the long dirt driveway, tires grinding against gravel that hadn't been leveled in years. Ahead stood Caleb's house, 2 stories of stubborn wood and peeling paint, sagging in some places but upright. A wide porch wrapped around the front, its swing hanging crooked, one chain longer than the other. Faded wind chimes dangled from the eaves, barely catching the breeze. On the right side, a tin-roofed workshop leaned toward the house like it was tired, but unwilling to fall. Out back, a broken fence tried and failed to keep the desert out. The whole place looked worn, but lived in, like it hadn't been abandoned even if life had tried to convince it otherwise. As the truck pulled to a stop, the front door swung open. A teenage boy stepped out, lean, sharp-shouldered hair messy like it had given up being combed. Noah Foster, Caleb's kid, 15. Old enough to carry a chip on his shoulder the size of a toolbox. He crossed his arms, staring at the truck like it had personally offended him. His eyes flicked from the dusty wheelchair to the twins in the back seat, then to Harper, then back to his dad. Caleb sighed as he killed the engine. Noah didn't say a word, just tilted his head slightly, a question without asking. Caleb stepped out. Noah, we've got company. The boy didn't blink, didn't smile. Just shifted his weight from one foot to the other, boots scraping against the wood of the porch. Harper opened her door on her own, wrestling her wheelchair into place without waiting for help. Caleb started to move toward her, thought better of it, and stayed by the truck. The girls slid out next, Luna clutching the stuffed fox Hazel, holding the toy keyboard like it was the most precious thing left in the world. Noah watched them all in silence, jaw set. The front steps creaked as Harper locked her wheels into the dirt and glanced around. This is your place, Caleb nodded. It's got its quirks, but yeah, it stands up in the wind most days. Water runs if you jiggle the pipes twice. Heat works if you bang the furnace hard enough. For a long moment, no one said anything. Then Noah spoke, low, dry, unimpressed. New guests, huh? Temporary, Caleb replied, just helping out. Noah didn't argue, just turned, shoved the front door wider and muttered, "Hope they like pancakes for dinner, 'cause that's all we've got." The wind picked up, the wind chimes rattled softly, a sound halfway between a welcome and a warning. Caleb gestured toward the porch. "Come on in. Mind the third step, it sinks." Harper nodded once. The wheelchair creaked forward. The girls followed close, clutching everything they owned. Noah stood aside, watching them pass. His expression didn't soften, but it didn't harden either. Something was shifting, quiet, small, but real. The kitchen smelled faintly of burnt syrup and old coffee, a scent halfway between comfort and resignation. A wooden table sat at the center, scratched, water-stained, and a little uneven. 4 mismatched chairs surrounded it, one with a leg shorter than the others, steadied by a folded-up newspaper from 2014. Caleb flipped another pancake onto a chipped plate. "It's not fancy," he said, "but it's food." Harper wheeled herself up to the table. The girls climbed onto the chairs, their legs swinging too short to touch the floor. Luna placed her stuffed fox in her lap like it needed a seat too. Hazel set the toy keyboard next to her chair, its cracked plastic catching the kitchen light. Noah sat opposite them, arms folded, fork tapping rhythmically against his plate. His eyes moved between Harper, the girls, and the keyboard, calculating, guarded, saying everything his mouth refused to. Nobody reached for the food right away. The silence stretched long and thin, not hostile, not yet, just brittle. Caleb broke it first, sliding the plate toward Harper. "Help yourself." She hesitated, then nodded, picking up a pancake, tearing it in half like someone who'd learned not to take more than she needed. She passed the other half to Luna, then another to Hazel. Caleb caught Noah's look, that tight-jawed, "Are we really doing this?" look. He ignored it. So Caleb said, forcing casual, "Anyone allergic to, well, anything?" Hazel shook her head. Luna mirrored her. Harper muttered, "Just bureaucracy." It caught Noah off guard. His mouth twitched, not a smile, but close. The tension cracked just a little. Caleb poured syrup, the cheap kind that never fully dissolves, and slid it toward the girls. "Knock yourselves out." Hazel drizzled carefully like syrup was rationed gold. Luna dumped half the bottle before Harper gently tilted it back. Noah finally picked up his fork. "So where you guys from?" he asked, voice flat but curious beneath the armor. Harper met his gaze. "All over." "Military," Noah guessed. She nodded once. "Yeah." That answer landed like a quiet stamp on the table. Explained a lot. The posture, the tone, the silence. For a while, the only sounds were knives, scraping plates, forks, tapping syrup, dripping too slowly to satisfy impatient hands. Then Luna whispered, "Your house smells like old toast." Caleb chuckled. "Yeah, it's a feature, not a bug." Even Harper smirked, brief but real. In the background, the wind knocked something over in the workshop. Nobody flinched, not even the girls. By the end of the meal, the plates weren't empty, but something was lighter. Not fixed, not healed, but shifted. A family-shaped thing was starting to take form, rough, uneven, probably held together by duct tape and stubbornness. But maybe, just maybe, it was enough for now. The house settled into quiet. The way old places do, creaks in the floorboards, the low hum of wind slipping through cracks, and the occasional sigh from the walls like they were remembering something. Out on the porch, Harper sat alone. The stars above Red Hollow were brighter than anything she'd seen in years. No streetlights, no traffic, just sky. Miles and miles of it. She balanced the toy keyboard on her lap, flipping it over with practiced hands. The back panel was already half detached, the screws stripped from years of being opened, closed, and held together with hope. A small toolbox sat beside her wheelchair, borrowed from the workshop. A screwdriver, some electrical tape, a pair of needle-nose pliers. The keyboard was never really functional. A few keys worked when they felt like it. The speaker buzzed more than it sang. But none of that mattered. Not to the girls. Not to her. Harper gently pried the cracked battery cover loose. Rusted springs, corroded contacts. Typical. She started scraping at it with the screwdriver, slow and methodical, like it was the only thing keeping her hands steady tonight. The porch light above her flickered. Caleb hadn't gotten around to fixing it yet. Or maybe the bulb just didn't want to give up either. As she worked, her thumb brushed over something, a shallow groove carved into the plastic underside of the keyboard. She turned it toward the porch light, squinted. Faint, but there. Someone had scratched words into the plastic years ago. Letters wobbly, imperfect. Like a kid had done it. Play until it sounds right. Harper let out a breath she hadn't realized she was holding. A sound behind her boots on wood. Caleb leaned against the porch post, arms crossed, watching but not intruding. "You fixin' that thing or fighting it?" he asked quietly. Harper didn't look up. "Both. Winning." "Not yet," she smiled, small, crooked. "But I've got time." Caleb nodded, like that made perfect sense. Neither of them said anything for a while. Just the sound of the screwdriver tapping plastic, the wind rattling the chimes, the desert breathing around them. Then Caleb tipped his hat back. "You ever think maybe it ain't supposed to sound right?" Harper tightened a wire, didn't miss a beat. "Nah," she murmured. "Everything sounds wrong until it doesn't." And under the flickering light, with busted keys and rusted wires, she kept working. Morning came slow, wrapped in soft gold light, and the smell of desert dust warming under the sun. Caleb was already out back, kneeling by the fence line where the gate hung crooked, one hinge rusted through the other, holding on by sheer spite. He wiped his hands on a rag, squinted at the warped wood, and sighed. This gate had been threatening to fall for 2 years now. He just never got around to it. The crunch of wheels on gravel caught his ear. He turned. Harper was coming across the yard, wheeling herself with slow, steady pushes. Her sleeves were rolled up. A pair of worn gloves sat in her lap. "Morning," Caleb greeted, standing. "Sleep all right?" "Floor's uneven," Harper replied, adjusting her wheel. "But yeah." Her gaze flicked to the gate. "That thing bothering you or just threatening to bother you?" Caleb smirked, bit of both. Harper set the brake on her chair, pulled on her gloves. "You got another wrench." Caleb blinked. "You want to help?" She met his eyes dead steady. "I don't sit around well, not wired for it." For a second he opened his mouth, maybe to protest, maybe to explain, but shut it just as fast. Instead he ducked into the workshop, came back with another wrench and a set of pliers. "All right then," he said, handing them over. "Fair warning, the gate's stubborn." Harper rolled forward, inspecting the hinge like a mechanic inspects an old engine. Yeah, but so am I. They worked in silence for a while. Caleb held the gate steady while Harper loosened the bolt's fingers, moving precise, practiced. Her wheelchair shifted against the uneven dirt, but she braced with one arm, adjusting without a word. Caleb glanced sideways. "You've done this before. Field repairs," she said simply. "Out there you learn fast or you lose faster." There wasn't pity in his voice when he asked Army. Harper nodded. "Army, 8 years, then life happened." Caleb didn't press. Didn't need to. People like them, the kind who carried more than they said, didn't always need words to fill the gaps. Together they unhooked the broken hinge. Caleb held the frame while Harper threaded the new bolt. Her hands moved with a kind of muscle memory, steady, efficient. When the last bolt tightened, Caleb stepped back, gave the gate a little push. It swung open, then closed perfectly. "Well," he muttered, wiping his hands, "didn't think I was hiring today." Harper cracked half a smile. "Didn't think I was applying." He nodded toward the porch. "Coffee's on. You drink coffee, right?" "Only if it's terrible," she shot back. Caleb chuckled. "Good, you'll fit right in." As they headed toward the house, the repaired gate swung gently behind them, steady, reliable. And for the first time in a long time, holding. The old picnic table sat in the corner of the yard, half sunk into the dirt, its paint peeling off like sunburned skin. One leg wobbled if you breathed too hard near it. Noah stood over it, holding a socket wrench, arms crossed, eyes squinting like the table had personally wronged him. Behind him, Luna and Hazel hovered, one holding a paintbrush bigger than her hand, the other clutching a handful of screws like they were treasure. Noah let out a slow sigh. "All right, listen up. First rule of fixing stuff." He paused, tapped the wrench against his palm. "Don't strip the bolt. If you strip it, you're dead." "Well, not actually dead, but it won't work. So basically dead." Luna nodded solemnly like she'd just been briefed on a top-secret mission. Hazel bit her bottom lip, staring at the pile of mismatched tools laid out like surgery instruments. Noah knelt down, set the wrench against a loose bolt. "See you line it up, turn it slow, firm, not crazy, just steady." He turned the wrench. The bolt groaned but tightened. "Hear that? That's the sound of success." Hazel stepped forward. Can I try?" Noah handed her the wrench, adjusting it to fit her smaller hands. "Yeah, but hold it here steady. And don't let it slip or you'll bust your knuckles. And it hurts. Trust me." Hazel nodded, tongue poking out the corner of her mouth in concentration. She turned the wrench. Slowly, carefully. The bolt tightened another inch. "Nice," Noah said, pretending not to be impressed, but absolutely impressed. "Not bad for a rookie." Luna, not to be left out, bounced on her heels. "Can I paint now?" Yeah. But shake the can first." Noah handed her the old tin of barn red paint. Luna rattled it like a maraca, grinning. When the lid popped open, the smell hit them sharp, chemical, familiar. Luna dipped her brush and slapped a bold streak of red across the tabletop. Then another. Hazel grabbed a second brush, more careful, tracing around the edges. The two of them painted in different languages, Luna wild and free, Hazel quiet and precise. Noah sat back on his heels watching them work. He didn't say it out loud, but something about it felt right. A table was just a thing, wood and screws, same as a gate, same as a house, same as maybe a family. You fix what's broken, tighten what's loose, paint over what's worn out, and sometimes that's enough. From the porch, Caleb watched arms folded, a soft smile tugging at the corner of his mouth. Harper rolled up beside him, followed his gaze. "Looks like they've got it handled," Caleb murmured. Harper nodded. "Yeah, they do." And for the first time in a long while, the yard felt less empty. The sun hung high, baking the dirt until it cracked like old porcelain. The smell of fresh paint mingled with sawdust rust and something faintly sweet, the smell of a place being put back together. The table stood proudly now. One leg still slightly crooked, but no one mentioned it. A coat of barn red paint covered the scars. A little uneven, a little messy, but full of fingerprints and pride. Caleb tossed a frisbee toward Noah, who caught it with one hand, then exaggerated a stumble just so Luna and Hazel could burst into giggles. Harper sat at the edge of the porch ramp watching, arms crossed, but her face softer than it had been in days. "All right," Noah called, grinning. "Next rule of the yard, no mercy." He flung the frisbee. It sailed too high, bonked off Luna's head, and flopped straight into Hazel's lap. The girls exploded, Hazel laughing so hard she nearly tipped over, Luna falling backward onto the grass, hands over her face. Caleb shook his head. "We're gonna have to add frisbee skills to your list of home repairs." Harper couldn't help it. A real laugh slipped out. Not forced, not polite. A laugh from somewhere that hadn't seen daylight in a long time. For a few minutes it was easy to pretend, easy to believe this was just a normal Saturday. No past, no questions, just sunlight and dumb games. Then something broke the moment. A shadow at the edge of the porch. A flick of movement, quick, almost like someone testing whether they were seen. Caleb noticed it first. His eyes darted toward the front door. Nothing there now but a plain white envelope had been slipped under the frame. No footsteps, no car pulling away. Just the letter. He walked over, bent down, picked it up. Thick paper, no return address, just one name written in neat, heavy ink. Harper Jensen. Caleb turned it over, sealed. Harper saw the look on his face. The laughter drained out of the air, slow but certain. "What's that?" she asked, already knowing she wouldn't like the answer. "Don't know," Caleb replied, "but it's for you." Noah, Luna, and Hazel paused, sensing the shift even if they didn't understand it. Caleb handed her the envelope without a word. Harper stared at it, fingers tracing the edges. For a long second, nobody moved. The only sound was the wind rattling the tin roof and the slow creak of the porch swing shifting in the breeze. Harper didn't open it, not yet. Instead, she set it gently on her lap like it was something fragile, or dangerous, or both. Night had a different kind of silence out here. Not empty, just heavier. Crickets buzzed somewhere near the fence line. A coyote howled far off toward the ridge. But aside from that, the world felt paused. Caleb sat at the kitchen table, mug of coffee in hand, half watching the steam curl upward. The porch light flickered behind him, throwing soft shadows against the cracked linoleum floor. The envelope still sat exactly where Harper had left it, on the edge of the counter. unopened, unmoved, but heavy, like paper shouldn't weigh that much. Caleb wasn't the kind to snoop, never had been. Life had taught him that folks shared what they wanted when they were ready. But this letter, it was different. His gaze drifted toward the living room. Harper was out there, curled up in the chair by the window, half asleep, pretending she wasn't keeping an eye on the girls dozing in their makeshift cots. Caleb reached for the envelope, just touched it. Didn't open it. Didn't even pick it up, just rested his fingers on it. A name printed in the corner caught his eye, not a person, a company. Grayson Holdings, Manhattan, New York. He frowned. Not the kind of place that sends birthday cards. The edges of the envelope were crisp, clean. Out of place in a house like this where nothing stayed new for long. His thumb brushed over the seal. A raised insignia, subtle but expensive. He couldn't make it out completely in the low light, but it felt corporate. Legal. Whatever this was, it wasn't junk mail. And it wasn't good news. Everything okay? Harper's voice cut through the quiet, low, tired, not accusing. Caleb jerked his hand back like the envelope had burned him. Didn't mean to pry, he said quickly. Just saw the sender. Harper wheeled forward, eyes sharp but not angry. She glanced at the envelope, then back at Caleb. I haven't opened it yet, she admitted, voice flat. Not sure I want to. Caleb nodded slowly. Yeah, but it found you anyway. Neither of them spoke for a long while. The kitchen clock ticked. The wind shifted, the porch swing groaned. Finally, Harper reached out, slid the envelope off the counter and held it in her lap like a weight she wasn't ready to carry, but knew sooner or later she would have to. The envelope sat in her lap for a long time. Harper turned it over once, twice. Her thumb traced the edges, feeling every imperfection, every tiny ripple in the paper. Her heart thudded, steady but not loud. Just heavy. She glanced at the girls fast asleep on the couch, Luna curled against Hazel, the battered stuffed fox between them like a tiny, worn-out guard dog. Caleb stood nearby, arms crossed but saying nothing, just present. A steady shape in the doorway. Finally, Harper slipped a fingernail under the seal and tore it open. The paper inside was thick, expensive, cream-colored with a subtle watermark that caught the kitchen light. She unfolded it, read the first line, blinked, read it again. Then her stomach dropped. Her hands tightened around the paper. It started formally, a letterhead from Grayson Holdings, a boutique law firm in Manhattan. The kind that didn't bother with people like her. The kind that usually sent bad news. Except this wasn't bad. Or maybe it was worse. Her eyes scanned the words. In accordance with the final directives of Mr. Jonathan Grayson, we are contacting you regarding the estate and trust established for the minor Hazel Jensen. A preliminary review of record statements and private correspondences indicates that Hazel Grayson, legally known as Hazel Jensen, is the biological descendant and sole heir the Weston Grayson Trust, currently valued at approximately $374 million. Her breath caught. Caleb's voice was quiet, careful. You all right? Harper didn't answer. Her eyes stayed locked on the paper, rereading the same sentence as if the words might change. This notice serves as an invitation to initiate formal proceedings regarding guardianship verification and transfer of assets. She shook her head. No, this isn't real. Her hand trembled. She gripped her leg, or where her leg used to be, an old reflex that didn't have anywhere to go anymore. Caleb stepped closer. "Harper." Her voice came out brittle. "I didn't tell him. I never told Jonathan, not about Hazel, not about any of it." She sank further into the chair, free hand pressed against her temple. Her pulse pounded behind her eyes. "Didn't think it mattered back then," she whispered. "Didn't think he'd ever care. Or maybe I didn't want him to." Caleb knelt in front of her, now steady but not pushing. "What does it say exactly?" She handed him the letter with fingers that didn't quite feel like hers. Caleb scanned it, his brow furrowed deeper with every line. 374 million, he read aloud, voice flat like the number itself broke something in his brain. "Yeah," Harper muttered hollow. "That's about what it says." Silence. The clock ticked. The wind sighed against the windows. Caleb folded the letter carefully, set it on the table like it might explode. "So what does that mean?" Harper stared past him, past the kitchen walls, past everything. "It means," she whispered, "the past just caught up." The house had gone still again. Not the peaceful kind of still, the kind that settles after a long day. No, this was the other kind. The kind where silence feels like it has weight, like the walls are holding their breath. Harper sat there for a while, eyes fixed on the folded letter sitting on the table. Like if she just stared long enough, it might disappear. It didn't. Caleb stood nearby, leaning against the doorway. He didn't say a word, didn't ask, just waited. After a long stretch of nothing, Harper moved. Slow, deliberate. She rolled her chair toward the corner of the living room where the girls had carefully propped the battered toy keyboard earlier. Her hands hovered over it for a second. Then with a push of her thumb, she popped the back panel open. The one she'd fixed 100 times before. The one that always came loose no matter how tight she turned the screws. Inside a hollow, just enough space for a couple of AA batteries or something else. Harper folded the letter in half, then half again. Pressed it flat, slid it inside the hollow, tucking it beneath a broken wire like it belonged there. Like it had always been there. Then she snapped the panel shut, not fast, not frantic, just firm. Done. Her hands stayed on the keyboard for a moment longer, fingers brushing the plastic like it was something fragile. Caleb watched, silent, his arms crossed, jaw tight, not judging, not offering, just there. Harper finally spoke, not looking at him. If it's out of sight, her voice was thin, quieter than it had been all day. Maybe it can be out of mind. For now, Caleb didn't answer right away, just shifted his weight boots, scuffing against the floor. "Yeah," he said softly. "Sometimes that works for a while." The words hung there, suspended in the space between them. She turned the keyboard back upright, settled it beside the couch where the girls were still sleeping, unaware that their world had just tilted. Caleb's eyes followed her hands. Watched the care in her movements. Watched the way she straightened the stuffed fox next to Hazel like it was some kind of shield. Then he nodded, slow, subtle. Didn't ask, didn't press. Sometimes not asking is its own kind of mercy. Harper wheeled back toward the kitchen. "It doesn't change anything, not tonight, not here." No, Caleb agreed, it doesn't. But as they stood there, both of them knew, whether spoken or not, that the letter was still there, waiting. The black SUV didn't belong here. It crawled up the dirt driveway like it was afraid the dust might stain the paint. Tires crunched against gravel, windows tinted dark enough to hide whoever sat inside. Caleb stood on the porch, arms crossed, watching it with a look that said he already didn't like whatever this was. The engine cut. A man stepped out, mid-30s, tailored gray suit. Shoes polished like mirrors, the kind that had never touched dirt until today. His haircut was sharp. His tie was tighter than any necktie had a right to be in this heat. He adjusted his cufflinks, glanced around the property like it was an inspection, and then his eyes landed on Harper. She'd wheeled out of the house as soon as she heard the tires. Sat there now, arms folded, waiting, braced. The man smiled, professional, hollow. "Ms. Jensen," he said, voice crisp but polite. "Griffin Ellis, senior counsel for Grayson Holdings." Harper's jaw tightened. "Yeah, I figured." Caleb didn't say a word, just shifted his weight, standing close enough that the message was clear. "You're on my property, watch yourself." Griffin continued like he hadn't noticed. "First, let me say I appreciate you receiving me on short notice. I realize this is unusual." Harper didn't blink. "Get to the point." Griffin nodded, flipping open a leather portfolio. "Of course. As outlined in the letter you received, Hazel Jensen, or more accurately, Hazel Grayson, has been identified as the sole beneficiary of the Weston Grayson Trust, a considerable estate with legal and fiduciary obligation that cannot be ignored." His eyes softened a fraction. "Practiced, controlled. I'm here today to discuss transitional arrangements." Caleb's brow furrowed. "Transitional?" Griffin glanced at him, then back to Harper. "Yes. In plain terms, the expectation from the trustees is that Hazel be relocated to New York, temporarily at first, to acclimate. Meet the board. Begin preparations for the role she's inheriting." Harper's fists clenched on the arms of her chair. "She's a kid, not a board member." Griffin's smile didn't waver. "Understandable. But with this level of inheritance comes responsibility. Education, media protection, estate management. The foundation intends to provide every resource necessary." "No," Harper said, voice sharp. "No, she's not going anywhere." Griffin adjusted his tie. "I anticipated resistance. But this isn't an optional conversation, Ms. Jensen." Caleb stepped forward, now his voice low even. "She's got a home, right here. You should remember that when you start making plans." Griffin closed the portfolio with a soft click. "A legal representative will follow up within 72 hours. I recommend preparing for that." Without waiting for a response, he turned, walked back to the SUV, and drove away, tires throwing up a cloud of dust that hung in the air long after he was gone. Harper sat still, hands trembling. Caleb stood beside her. Neither spoke, but both knew this wasn't over, not even close. Griffin didn't leave right away. After the polite threat was delivered, he lingered, adjusting his cufflinks, straightening his jacket as though the dust in the air might somehow stain his credibility. Harper wheeled forward, blocking his path back to the SUV, her eyes sharp, steady. "Let's get something straight. Hazel's not a business transaction. She's not a trust fund. And she's not leaving with you." Griffin tilted his head, lips pressed into something almost like sympathy, but not quite. "Ms. Jensen, I admire your spirit, I truly do. But this isn't about you. It's about what's best for Hazel. Caleb took a half-step forward, arms crossed. Funny, seems like what's best is the one thing nobody asked her about. Griffin sighed, tired, rehearsed. Look, I'm not the villain here, but the trustees have a legal responsibility, so do I. You were given notice. You've had time to consider. I am here officially to inform you that should you decline cooperation, the matter will escalate. Harper's hands tightened on the rims of her wheels. Escalate how? Griffin opened the portfolio again, pulled out a crisp folder stamped with the Grayson Holdings seal. The court will be petitioned for immediate custody review. Given Hazel's inheritance and the disparity in living conditions between this residence and her legal entitlement, a judge is unlikely to rule in your favor. The word residence was a knife, dull but deliberate. You mean you'll try to take her? Harper said, voice low but razor sharp. Not try. Proceed, Griffin corrected. Child Welfare Services will be notified. Guardianship would transfer to a foundation-appointed trustee in New York, temporarily until a long-term solution is determined. Caleb stepped in fully, now jaw set. You think you're walking onto someone's land, looking a kid's family in the eye and bulldozing them because a bunch of rich suits think money matters more than blood. Griffin didn't blink. Money doesn't trump blood, but it does come with obligations, responsibilities, risks. Harper's voice was a whisper now, the kind of quiet that only happens when someone's holding back something nuclear. You didn't care before. No one cared. Not when we were sleeping in shelters. Not when we were figuring out how to eat. But now that there's a check attached, now you care. Griffin closed the folder, smoothed the crease. This isn't personal, Ms. Jensen. It's structural. Harper shook her head. She's not going. Griffin stepped back. You have 72 hours. After that, the court will decide, not you. He didn't wait for a response. Just climbed into the SUV, shut the door with a sound that felt heavier than any slam, and drove away. The dust hadn't even settled before Harper exhaled, shaky. Broken but not beaten. Caleb stood beside her. Quiet. Solid. We fight, he said. Simple, sure. Harper nodded. Yeah, we fight. The SUV disappeared down the dirt road, swallowed by the dust and the distance. The sound of the engine faded, then vanished. But the silence it left behind wasn't empty. It was thick, heavy, the kind that settled into bones and refused to leave. Harper sat motionless at the bottom of the porch ramp. Her hands rested on the rims of her wheelchair, knuckles pale. Shoulders tense, jaw clenched so tight it hurt. Caleb stood beside her, not speaking, not moving, just there, a presence, solid. The wind picked up. Dust swept across the yard. The broken wind chimes trembled, barely making a sound, as if even they weren't sure if now was the right time to speak. Then a sound, faint, wrong. A single flat off-key note. It came from the porch. From the toy keyboard, the same battered thing that had sat through storms, road trips, and shelters. The wind had jostled it just enough. One cracked key depressed halfway. Ding. Not music, not melody, just noise. Out of place, out of tune. Harper's head turned slowly toward it. Her eyes locked on the keyboard like it had betrayed her. For a long second she didn't breathe. Another gust, another broken note. Ding ding. She wheeled closer, hands trembling now, not with fear. Not exactly, something else. A boiling mix of helplessness, anger, grief. She reached out, pressed a key. It didn't respond. Tried another, a hollow buzz, then silence. Her hands curled into fists. "You've held together for this long," she whispered, not to the keyboard. "Not really. Don't fall apart now." Behind her, Caleb shifted. His voice was soft. "Careful, it's just the wind." "No," Harper said quietly. "It's everything." For a second, she wanted to smash it. To take the stupid broken plastic thing and hurl it off the porch, to watch it shatter into something that matched how it felt inside her. But she didn't. Instead, her fingers brushed the underside, that shallow groove, the one with the scratched words that never quite faded. "Play until it sounds right." A breath caught in her throat. She let her hands fall to her lap. Caleb crouched beside her, steady, quiet. "We'll figure it out." Harper stared straight ahead, voice low, flat. "I don't know how." "Doesn't mean we won't," Caleb said simply. The wind rattled the keyboard again. Another sour note. But this time Harper didn't flinch. Because broken wasn't the same as finished. The house had fallen quiet. The kind of quiet that only happens after the world feels like it's tipped sideways. The girls were asleep. Noah, too. Somewhere in the back room, the soft hum of his old radio leaked through the walls, low, muffled, barely there. Out on the porch, Harper sat alone. The night air was crisp, dry. Stars stretched endless over the black horizon, spilling light that couldn't quite reach the earth. With a slow exhale, she reached down, unlatched the straps, pulled free the prosthetic. The release wasn't relief, not tonight. It was admission of how tired she was, of how much pretending costs. The leg leaned against the porch post now. Just an object. A hollow thing shaped like something it could never truly replace. Her hands rubbed the raw skin where plastic met flesh. Small bruises, old calluses, quiet aches no one ever saw. Heard that. Footsteps. Caleb, he didn't ask, didn't comment, just walked out, sat on the top step, close but not too close. For a while, neither said anything. Just the sound of crickets, the whisper of wind, the dry creak of the porch swing swaying empty. Then Harper's voice, small, flat. "You ever get tired of fighting?" Caleb didn't answer right away. Took his time, watched the horizon like maybe the right words were hiding out there. "Yeah," he said finally. "Most days." Harper nodded, staring at her hands. "It feels like no matter how hard you hold something together, something else falls apart." "Yeah," Caleb agreed, "it does." She let out a shaky breath. "I was supposed to be stronger than this. I was built for this, trained for it." And yet her hands gestured vague, helpless at the nothingness in front of her. "I don't know how to fight this." Caleb leaned back, resting on his elbows. "Maybe it's not about fighting." Harper glanced at him, skeptical. "What else is there?" A soft shrug. "Sometimes you don't fight. You hold. You weather. You stay standing until the storm gets bored." The word sat between them, heavy, true. Harper rubbed her face. "I don't even know how to tell them." How do you explain to a 7-year-old that the world just decided she belongs somewhere else? Caleb shook his head. "You don't." He tapped his chest, gentle. "You show her. You show her what home looks like, feels like, sounds like." Harper closed her eyes. Let the wind pass over her. For a long minute neither of them moved, just breathing, existing, sitting inside the ache without trying to fix it. Then Caleb added, voice low but certain like an anchor dropped in deep water. Harper, you're not fighting alone anymore. And for the first time that night the weight in her chest shifted. Not gone, but shared. Morning came quietly. Soft light filtered through clouds that hadn't quite decided whether to stay or drift on. Out by the barn, a scrap of plywood leaned against a bale of hay, chipped, weathered, perfect. Noah crouched beside it, sorting through a pile of old paint cans. Reds, blues, a little yellow that might still be good if you stirred it hard enough. Luna sat cross-legged, holding a stubby brush like it was a magic wand. Hazel knelt beside her, more serious, focused the way she always was when her hands were busy. Noah popped open a can. The lid stuck, then popped with a loud metallic snap. He glanced at the girls. All right, ground rules. No painting each other, no painting me, no painting the goat. Luna grinned, already dipping her brush into a swirl of blue. What about the grass? Noah sighed. Let's try to leave nature alone. Hazel tapped the wood with her fingertip. What are we writing? Noah paused, thought about it longer than he expected. I don't know, something true. Luna tilted her head. Like our names. Hazel shook her head. No, something about the house. She glanced at the porch, the worn wood, the crooked swing, the toy keyboard propped against the wall. It's the house with the organ. Noah blinked, then nodded. Yeah, the organ house. He picked up the brush. In big block letters, he dragged red across the wood. The organ house, lopsided, imperfect, but proud. Hazel bit her lip, dipped into the yellow. Below Noah's words, with careful looping letters, she wrote, Family lives here. Luna added a crooked heart beside it. Then a sun with too many rays. Then a goat badly drawn but wearing sunglasses. They laughed. Not the loud, wild kind. The quieter kind. The kind that bubbles out when your hands are busy and the world feels okay. Noah sat back on his heels, wiping a smudge of blue off his arm. For a second he didn't say anything, just looked at it. A stupid sign. On broken wood. Painted with old brushes and colors that didn't quite match. But it was real, and somehow it mattered. You think they'll like it? Hazel asked softly. Noah didn't answer right away. Just looked at her, at Luna, at the house, at the mess they'd made together. Yeah, he said finally, voice low. Certain, I think they'll love it. From the porch unseen, Harper watched. One hand pressed over her mouth, not to hide sadness, not tonight, but because sometimes happiness shows up so quietly you forget how much it can ache. The afternoon sun hit different today. Warmer, heavier, like it knew something was coming. Harper sat at the kitchen table, her phone resting face down in front of her. For 5 whole minutes she just stared at it. The letter from Grayson Holdings was open now. Unfolded, no longer hiding in the back of the toy keyboard. No longer something to avoid. She inhaled slow, steady, then flipped the phone over. Dialed. 1 ring, 2. Griffin Ellis Grayson Holdings. The voice was clipped, polished, professional. Harper didn't wait. It's Harper Jensen. A pause, then a soft clearing of the throat. Ms. Jensen, I was expecting your call. Her fingers drummed against the table, not from nerves, from decision. I've read the documents, I understand the claim, and I'm not here to argue biology. Griffin didn't respond immediately. Just that lawyer silence, the kind that waits to see where the trap is before stepping forward. So he said carefully, "You're agreeing to submit to genetic verification." Yeah, her voice didn't waver. "DNA test, paperwork, whatever hoops you want. I won't fight that part." Griffin exhaled through his nose. A small victory in his world. "Very well. I can arrange a technician to, but..." One word, flat, heavy. Griffin stopped, but Harper's tone shifted. Lower, firmer, steel wrapped in velvet. "Hazel stays here. With me. This is her home, her family. You can verify paternity all day long, but you're not tearing her away from the life she knows. Not for any amount of money, not for any boardroom." Griffin's polished tone faltered just a hair. "Ms. Jensen, as I've stated, the trustees have obligations, considerations regarding Hazel's welfare, her education, her security." "I am her security," Harper snapped. "You think a trust fund replaces bedtime stories. You think board meetings raise a kid." A pause, then colder. "This isn't entirely your decision." Harper's jaw clenched. "You can file petitions, serve notices, throw every lawyer in Manhattan at me. Fine, but I will fight you in court, in the press, in front of any judge who will listen. You come for her, you better pack a lunch." Silence. Then Griffin sighed. "Very well. I'll inform the trustees you've agreed to verification under objection to guardianship transfer. Expect further communication shortly." Harper's lips tightened. "I'll be waiting." She hung up before he could reply. The phone hit the table with a soft thud. Her hands trembled, but not from fear, from adrenaline, from choosing. From the living room, the faint sound of Luna and Hazel arguing over crayon colors drifted in. Harper smiled, small, fierce. "Yeah," she whispered to herself, "they're worth it." The courthouse wasn't big. Just 3 floors of faded brick with a sagging flag out front and windows that hadn't been washed since someone cared enough to notice. But to Harper it felt massive, heavy. Like the walls carried the weight of every fight that had ever been lost inside them. The hallway smelled like old paper and floor wax. The kind of place where voices drop to whispers without anyone saying why. At the end of the hall, a door. Family Court, 2B. Hazel stood in front of it. Small, too small for this. Her fingers gripped Noah's hand, not like a kid holding a brother's hand, but like someone clinging to a railing in high wind. Noah didn't flinch, just squeezed back. His thumb rubbed circles over her knuckles, quiet, solid, present. Behind them, Harper rolled forward. On her left, Caleb walked beside her, tall, steady, a wall made of denim, boot leather, and stubbornness. The door loomed. A bailiff stood beside it, stern, neutral. "Ms. Jensen." Harper nodded. "That's us. Proceed inside. Judge Walker will join shortly." The bailiff pushed open the door. Hinges groaned. Inside, the courtroom wasn't grand. Just wood-paneled walls, a scuffed floor, mismatched chairs that had seen better decades. But the bench, the judge's bench, stood higher, a reminder of who held the power here. Griffin was already seated at the petitioner's table, suit pressed, papers stacked in neat little rows. His briefcase open, his smile tight. professional, controlled. Harper wheeled forward, positioning herself at the respondent's table. Caleb dropped into the chair beside her. Noah slid into the seat behind, pulling Hazel close to his side. Harper reached back without turning and squeezed Hazel's knee. A signal. A promise. We're right here, not moving. Caleb did the same. His broad hand rested on Hazel's shoulder, firm, unshakable. Across the aisle, Griffin adjusted his tie, checked his watch. No rush, no worry. The court clerk scribbled something, tapped a few keys, cleared her throat. All rise. The judge entered, robes, heavy face unreadable. Late 50s, silver hair. Eyes that had seen every version of heartbreak that ever passed through these walls. Be seated. Her voice was even, sharp, not cruel, not soft. She shuffled a few papers. This is the matter of Grayson Holdings petitioning custody modification regarding minor Hazel Jensen or Hazel Grayson. She glanced up, met Harper's gaze, then Caleb's, then Griffin's, then finally Hazel's. The judge's eyes softened just a flicker. Before we begin, she said quietly, I want everyone in this room to remember this is not about trusts, not about wealth. This is about a child. Her gavel tapped, not a slam, just a beginning. Proceed. The air tightened, shoulders squared, and behind Hazel, Harper and Caleb sat like walls, like anchors, like the kind of home no money could ever buy. Griffin stood, straightened his jacket, smoothed the front like the fabric itself was an argument. Your Honor, he began, voice calm, but precise. We are here today not out of malice but obligation. The Weston Grayson Trust is a significant entity tied not only to wealth but legacy. Ms. Jensen, while no doubt a loving guardian, cannot reasonably provide the environment, the security, the preparation required for a child inheriting a trust of this magnitude. His words fell like polished stones, measured, cold. The foundation offers tutors, legal counsel, media protection, financial advisors. A structured life. The kind of life Hazel Grayson deserves. Hazel flinched at the name she'd barely worn. Griffin glanced toward Harper's table. This is not about removing her from family. Visitation would be arranged, but the primary responsibility, the stewardship of her future, must fall to those equipped legally and logistically to handle it. He sat, unbothered, certain. The judge nodded. Thank you, Mr. Ellis. Ms. Jensen, your response. Harper's hands gripped the wheels of her chair, knuckles white. She glanced back at Hazel, at Noah, at Caleb, then turned forward. Her voice didn't tremble, didn't rise. It was steady, quiet, the kind of quiet that fills a room more than shouting ever could. Your Honor, I won't argue the numbers. I won't pretend I can offer a penthouse or private schools or whatever they think a life is supposed to look like. Her fingers tightened. But what I do offer is something none of those things can buy. She inhaled, slow but sure. I offer a lap that's held her when she was sick. Hands that packed her school lunches, arms that carried her through shelters, motel rooms, and nights when we had no place to go. Her voice cracked not with weakness but with weight. I offer bedtime stories. I offer safety. I offer someone who knows which nightmares make her wake up crying and which songs help her fall back asleep. A pause, heavy, unflinching. I know the scar on her left knee from when she fell off her bike. I know the mole behind her ear that nobody else notices. I know how she likes her pancakes cut into triangles because squares make her nervous for reasons she can't even explain. Harper's eyes locked on the judge. That's what being a mother is, not DNA, not dollars, not trust funds. She sat back, shoulders squared. I didn't choose for her to be born into wealth, but I chose her. Every day, I choose her still. The courtroom went silent, no shuffle, no cough, just the weight of truth. Even Griffin shifted in his seat, just a little. The judge folded her hands. "Thank you, Ms. Jensen." Her gavel tapped once. "We will take a short recess." The judge returned to the bench, robes trailing, gavel in hand. Her face was steady, not cold, but unreadable. The courtroom stood, then sat. She shuffled the papers in front of her hands, slow, deliberate. When she spoke, her voice wasn't loud, but it was absolute. "I have reviewed the documents, the claims, and more importantly, I have listened." Her eyes swept across the room from Griffin to Harper, then down to Hazel. The smallest person in the room, but suddenly the center of gravity. This case is not and never was about money. It's about identity, about belonging, about defining what family truly means. She tapped the paper. "There is no dispute regarding paternity. The DNA results are clear. Hazel Jensen is legally the biological child of the late Jonathan Grayson." A flicker, Griffin's shoulder straightened, already expecting victory. "But," one word sharp. Griffin froze. The judge continued. "Biology establishes lineage, but it does not establish parenthood." Her gaze shifted to Harper. "Ms. Jensen has demonstrated beyond doubt that she is Hazel's mother in every way that matters. She has been her protector, her teacher, her constant." She leaned forward, hands folded. "This court will not sever that bond." Caleb let out a breath he didn't know he'd been holding. Harper squeezed Hazel's knee beneath the table, steady grounding. The judge's voice softened but didn't waver. "Therefore, this court recognizes Hazel Jensen as the rightful heir to the Weston Grayson Trust with all rights and responsibilities therein." Griffin nodded, accepting or pretending to. However, the judge added firmly, "Guardianship, physical custody, and all primary decision-making shall remain with Ms. Harper Jensen. Here, in this home, in this family." Her eyes flicked toward Griffin. "The foundation may offer resources, educational support, financial advisement, but it holds no claim over this child's life, her home, or her day-to-day care." She tapped the gavel, so ordered. Silence. For a beat, no one moved. Then Hazel leaned sideways and buried her face in Harper's side. Harper's hand slid to the back of Hazel's head, cradling it, fingers threading through her hair. Not crying, just holding. Caleb reached across, squeezed Harper's shoulder. Noah grinned big, unguarded, and threw his arms around Hazel from behind, nearly knocking her over. Even Griffin simply gathered his papers, quiet, almost respectful, almost. The judge stood. "I wish you luck. This court is adjourned." Gavel, a single clean strike. The sound of something closing and something opening. The dirt road hadn't changed much. Still dusty, still winding. Still the kind of road that made you slow down whether you wanted to or not. But the house at the end of it that had changed. Not in big ways, not flashy. No new siding, no fancy paint. but in the kind of ways that mattered. The front porch was freshly mended. The crooked swing no longer creaked, it swayed. Easy, comfortable, like it finally trusted the wind again. And hanging from the beam over the porch steps a sign, faded, a little chipped at the corners but proud. Bright block letters surrounded by uneven hearts, crooked stars, and one badly drawn goat with sunglasses. The organ house, family lives here. A year hadn't dulled the colors, not really. If anything, it had made them softer, warmer. Inside the house, laughter echoed. Pots clanged. Someone, probably Noah, yelled something about burned toast. Out by the garden, Hazel knelt in the dirt, fingers busy pulling weeds with practiced hands. Beside her, Luna was humming half a song, half a daydream. The rows were straighter now, the soil richer. Where there had once been broken fences and patches of dry earth now grew tomatoes, sunflowers, squash vines that stretched like they were trying to hug the whole yard. Harper sat on the porch, her chair tipped back just slightly, foot resting on the rail. The prosthetic was off for now, set aside beneath her. She didn't need it today. Not here. She held a mug. Steam curled into the morning air. Her eyes scanned the yard, at Hazel, at Luna, at Noah wrestling with the old chicken coop door that never did shut right. Then up to the sign. Her lips pulled into something soft, gentle, the kind of smile that didn't need to be wide to mean everything. Footsteps creaked behind her. Caleb, carrying a box full of mismatched tools and a screwdriver between his teeth. He set it down, pulled the screwdriver free, wiped his hands on his jeans. Didn't think that sign would last a month, he muttered, squinting up at it. Guess I was wrong. Harper glanced at him. Yeah, funny thing about stuff that's built with love. Holds up better than you'd think. Caleb chuckled, a quiet sound more in his chest than his throat. Looks like it. A gust of wind tugged at the corners of the sign. It swayed but didn't fall. Didn't even flinch. Family lives here, Harper whispered. Yeah, it really does. The wind carried her words out across the fields, out toward the road like a promise. A quiet one, but one built to last. The long wooden table sat beneath a string of mismatched lights hung between two leaning pine trees. The bulbs flickered not because they were broken, but because they were old and real. Plates clinked, forks scraped. Laughter floated into the warm dusk like fireflies. Noah was mid-story, something about a goat, a shovel, and a very bad decision when Luna snorted so hard milk came out her nose. Hazel doubled over laughing. Caleb grinned, shaking his head, slicing bread like it was the most serious job in the world. Harper sat at the end of the table, one hand wrapped around a mug of tea. The other hovered over her laptop, fingers dancing across the keys. On the screen, a blog post, draft number 4. The organ house, notes on how to stay standing. Her words flowed, simple, honest. There's no manual for how to build a family out of broken pieces. You just show up. Every day, even when you're tired, especially when you're tired. She paused, looked up, watched Luna sneak an extra roll onto Hazel's plate when she thought no one was watching. Caleb caught it, said nothing, just smiled into his glass. Harper smiled too, turned back to her screen. Sometimes healing looks like tomato plants where dead grass used to be. Sometimes it sounds like a busted toy organ played completely out of key but played anyway. A few notes echoed from the porch. Hazel had climbed onto the swing, poking at the keyboard. The notes were crooked, imperfect, but soft. Familiar. Home. Harper typed the last line. Turns out family isn't something you find. It's something you build. One note, one meal, one promise at a time. She hit post. No fanfare, no applause. Just a quiet kind of right. Behind her, Caleb leaned over, whispering like a secret. "You finally finished that thing." Harper nodded. "Yeah, I think I did." The wind tugged at the lights. The laughter rose again. And for once, nobody was waiting for the other shoe to drop. This was enough. The sky faded into a soft watercolor of orange and pink. The kind of sunset that didn't demand attention but quietly asked for it. On the porch, the battered toy organ sat exactly where it always had, a little crooked, a little worn, still waiting. Hazel climbed onto the swing beside it. Fingers hovered, hesitated, then pressed. For a second, just a heartbeat, everyone paused. Caleb setting plates, Harper closing her laptop, Noah mid-sentence. Then the sound. Not broken, not buzzing. A chord. Clean. Sure. True. Hazel blinked, pressed again. Another chord. Not perfect, but right. Luna gasped, clapped her hands. "You fixed it." Hazel smiled, small, quiet, but real. "No, I just played until it sounded right." Harper's hand covered her mouth. Not to hold back sadness, but because sometimes joy arrives like a wave you forgot you were waiting for. Caleb looked up at the sign swinging overhead. "Family lives here," he murmured. "Yeah, it sure does." The wind tugged at the trees. The porch lights flickered on soft, steady, and beneath it all, Hazel kept playing. Notes rising into the evening like small promises. Broken wasn't the same as finished, and sometimes you just play until it sounds right. The porch light clicks on soft, steady. Hazel's little hands hover over the old toy organ. This time the notes are clear. They aren't perfect. They were never meant to be. But they're hers. Caleb leans back in his chair, glancing up at the wooden sign that still hangs, a little crooked, a little faded, but holding strong. The organ house, family lives here. Harper smiles, pulling the blanket tighter over her legs. Not because it's cold, but because this right here is the kind of warmth you don't find in the weather. The wind carries the sound of laughter, a broken melody, and the soft promise of something that feels a whole lot like forever. And the camera lingers just for a second on a tiny new sapling planted by the fence. Its roots are shallow, but it's growing. Reaching. 'Cause that's the thing about love. You don't find it, you build it. One note, one meal, one day at a time. If this story left something warm in your chest, maybe leave a like. And if you want more stories like this, quiet ones, real ones, the kind that remind you there's still good out there, maybe hit subscribe. No pressure, just an open door. Always here whenever you need it.